Earth was a quiet planet, nestled in a galaxy filled with powerful beings and endless conflict. The people of Earth had always kept to themselves, focusing on their own world, their own struggles. Despite the galaxy-wide war that raged on for years, Earth had remained neutral. The leaders of the planet, including a strong-willed diplomat named Sarah Walker, believed that their role in the galaxy was not to fight, but to observe. They had no interest in becoming involved in the endless disputes of alien species, as Sarah walked through the corridors of the United Nations building. Her thoughts were heavy. She had just attended a meeting with the global leaders, and the tension in the room had been thick. News of another invasion, this time by the Zorgal Empire, had reached Earth. The Zorgal were a ruthless species, known for their violent conquests of weaker planets. Earth's leaders knew about the war that had torn through countless worlds, but they also knew that Earth was far from the front line. They had chosen isolation over intervention. "We cannot afford to be involved," Sarah had said during the meeting. "We have our own people to protect. If we get involved now, we risk everything." She understood the need for peace, but part of her wondered if they were making the right choice. Would their refusal to join the war one day cost them dearly? She couldn't shake the thought. Even as she walked away from the meeting, the voices of the other leaders echoing in her mind, they all agreed to stay neutral. Earth would remain a peaceful planet. But as Sarah stood by the window in her office, looking out at the bustling city below, a sense of unease settled over her. Earth was not the only planet in the galaxy, and soon the conflict that surrounded that might not be something they could ignore. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she felt the pressure of leadership weighing on her. Days passed, and the situation worsened. Reports came in from all corners of the galaxy of planets falling, of people fleeing their homes, of entire civilizations being wiped out by the Zorgal Empire. The Zorgal were known for their speed and strength in battle, leaving nothing behind but destruction. Yet Earth's leaders refused to act. They trusted their defenses, their isolation, and the hope that the war would never touch their doorstep in the halls of government. Discussions were held late into the night. Sarah was often in these meetings, listening carefully, but saying little. She knew that the weight of these decisions was not hers alone to bear. She couldn't change the minds of the councilmen who believed in staying neutral. Earth had no reason to risk everything by joining a war that seemed so far away, as Earth's defenses continued to improve. Sarah found herself more and more in the public eye. She spoke with diplomats from distant planets, assuring them that Earth's position had not changed. Yet, deep inside, she questioned whether they could afford to remain on the sidelines for much longer. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that something would have to give. The peace Earth had known was beginning to feel like a fragile illusion. The communication channels hummed with incoming data, but the threat from the Zorgal Empire was still a distant concern, one that Sarah believed could be avoided. Until one evening, everything changed. The first wave of attack came unexpectedly. From a fleet of Zorgal ships that appeared out of nowhere, the planetary defense systems, built to defend against minor threats, weren't equipped to handle such a massive force. Sarah's heart sank as the message arrived. Zorgal Empire has entered Earth's space. Their intentions are unclear, but they are heading directly towards Earth. Panic spread across the Earth like wildfire. The government scrambled, and every news outlet broadcasted the same warning. The Zorgal were here, Sarah, along with the rest of Earth's leaders had spent years convincing their people that Earth's neutrality was their greatest strength. But now, it felt like a mistake. The Zorgal were known to conquer planets swiftly and decisively. Earth's lack of military involvement, her reliance on diplomacy and isolation, was suddenly their greatest vulnerability. In the council chambers, Sarah stood before the leaders of Earth, her voice steady, but her mind racing. The room was tense, with everyone anxiously awaiting orders. She was supposed to remain calm, to be the steady hand, but the reality of the situation was terrifying. "We need to act quickly," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Our defenses are not enough. We've underestimated the threat." An older man, General Arthur Grant, spoke up, his voice low and serious. "We've spent years preparing for this moment," he said. but we didn't believe it would come so soon. Earth isn't ready for a war. The words stung. Sarah had spent her life believing that Earth didn't need to fight, that isolation and peace would always be enough. But now, standing in front of the council, she realized how wrong they had been. The Zorgal were here, and Earth would have to decide. Continue hiding behind their peaceful stance or take action to defend their home. There was no more time for hesitation. The weight of the decision was overwhelming. Sarah knew they couldn't just sit and wait. The people of Earth needed to be protected. It was time to act, to finally make a stand. The message was clear. Earth had refused to join the war, but now they had no choice. The Zorgal had chosen the wrong enemy, and as Sarah watched the fleet of Zorgal ships approaching on the monitor, she felt a surge of resolve. Earth would fight back. They had no other choice. The Zorgal Empire's ships loomed large in Earth's sky, casting long shadows over cities below. It had all happened so quickly. One moment Earth was a peaceful, isolated planet, and the next they were staring down the might of an enemy they had only heard of in rumors. The first wave of the invasion had been swift, without warning, and the threat was growing stronger by the hour. Sarah Walker stood in the control room, her mind racing. The room was filled with her advisors, military, officials, and tech experts, all working in a frantic panic to figure out a plan. The Zorgal Empire had arrived in force, too much force for Earth's current defenses. We can't stop them. Our shields are too weak, one of the tech specialists said, his voice shaking. He was staring at the giant ships that appeared. On every screen, their menacing form, a clear reminder of Earth's vulnerability. Sarah took a deep breath and forced herself to focus. She had always been a diplomat, believing in peaceful resolutions and negotiations, but this was different. The stakes were no longer abstract. Earth was under threat, and the time for talking was over. General Grant, she said, turning to the aging military leader standing beside her. What are our options? The general looked grim. We've got nothing that can match their firepower, ma'am. Our best bet is to try and delay them by time for civilians to evacuate and maybe, just maybe, give us a chance to fight back. Sarah nodded, feeling a heavy weight in her chest. Earth had built defenses for minor threats, small skirmishes, a rogue fleet here or there, but nothing like this. The Zorgal were an empire, and they didn't take kindly to planets refusing to join the war. We can't delay. We need to do more than just hold them off. We need a plan, and we need it fast, she said, her voice firm despite the fear gnawing. At her, the general looked down at the screen again, then back at her. There's one thing we can try, but it's risky. We could deploy the new energy grid system, the one we've been developing in secret. It's not fully tested, but it might be able to disrupt their ships. If it works, we might be able to knock them out of orbit, at least temporarily. The idea was dangerous, but it was the only option they had. Sarah looked around at the team in the room, each person silently agreeing that they had no other choice. She said, a sense of resolve hardening inside her. Whatever it takes. Hours later, Sarah stood outside the control room, watching as the massive ships loomed closer on the horizon. The sky above Earth, usually so peaceful, was now filled with the dark shadows of warships. Her mind was still, racing, trying to come to terms with the sudden turn of events. Captain David Mills, a man who had spent most of his life serving in the military, approached her. His uniform was crisp, but the look on his face told her he was just as unsettled as everyone else. It's happening, isn't it? David asked quietly, standing next to her. Sarah didn't answer at first. She wasn't sure how to explain it. Earth had never faced an enemy like this before. For the first time, she realized that her belief in peace might not be enough. The Zorgal Empire wasn't interested in talking. It'd come to conquer. Yes, she said finally, her voice steady. But we're not going down without a fight. David nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. We'll do what we can. We've got the people. They just need to know how to fight. Back in the command room, the energy grid system was being activated. The scientists and engineers worked quickly, inputting commands as the Zorgal ships moved ever closer. The large screens flickered as the system came online, and the hum of the machinery filled the room. A sense of tension hung in the air. Each second Feeling like a lifetime, Sarah paced nervously. How long until we know if it works? She asked, her voice tinged with frustration. A scientist, his face pale, looked up from his terminal. We won't know for sure until we deploy it, ma'am. But the grid is designed to disrupt their power systems, possibly shutting down their ships. If it works, we might be able to force them to retreat. If, Sarah echoed, her heart sinking. But there was no time for doubt. The Zorgal ships were almost within firing range. Do it now, she ordered. Her voice was unwavering. Earth had nothing left to lose. The control room fell silent as the final sequence was entered. Sarah held her breath. For a moment there was nothing. Then, suddenly, the air around them seemed to vibrate, and the screens blinked to life. On the massive display, the Zorgal ships began to flicker. Sparks of energy surged across their hulls. It's working. Someone shouted in disbelief. The Zorgal fleet had stopped in its tracks. Drifting aimlessly in space, their once imposing strength now reduced to a vulnerable position. Sarah allowed herself a small breath of relief. But she knew it wasn't over. The Zorgal weren't a race to be underestimated. They would retaliate, and they would retaliate hard. Get our fleet ready, she ordered. We may have bought ourselves some time, but we need to make sure they don't recover. We fight now, or we may never get another chance. David Mills, standing beside her, gave a firm nod. Understood. Let's show them what Earth's made of. As the Earth forces prepared for battle, Sarah's thoughts swirled. The Zorgal had thought Earth was weak, unprepared, and easy to take. But Earth had something the Zorgal didn't expect: determination. Sarah looked out at the sky now, filled with the weight of the future. The fight for Earth had just begun. The Zorgal Empire's fleet had been temporarily disabled, but Sarah Walker knew this was far from a victory. Earth's forces had just bought themselves a brief moment of respite. The enemy ships, now floating uselessly in space, would not remain disabled forever. They were too powerful, too determined, to be stopped by a single blow. We've bought ourselves some time. But they won't just sit there, General Arthur Grant said, his voice low and serious. The general had seen battles before, but this was different. The Zorgal weren't just any invaders. They were part of a massive empire. And they didn't take kindly to being humiliated. Sarah turned to the screen where the Zorgal ships hovered, slowly regaining power. It was clear that they were starting to reactivate their systems. The moment of surprise was over. Earth's enemies would soon be back, and this time they would be prepared. We need to be ready, Sarah said, her voice steady. We've given them a taste of what we can do, but now we show them who we really are. Earth's forces had begun to rally. Military personnel from all corners of the world had come together to form a united defense. The once divided nations had set aside their differences, knowing that survival depended on their unity. And in this chaos, humans showed their true strength. Captain David Mills was overseeing the fleet preparations. With years of military experience, he had always believed in the strength of human resolve. But now, he had to prove it. The weapons systems on Earth's ships had been updated to give them the best chance against the Zorgal Empire. But the human fleet was still small compared to the mighty Zorgal armada. They had to rely on creativity and courage, not just firepower. David, Sarah said, entering the control room, her eyes focused and determined. How are we looking? David turned to her, his face set with determination. Our ships are ready. We've got the best of what Earth can offer. But it won't be enough if the Zorgal come at us with everything they've got. We'll have to fight. Smart? We've done that before, Sarah replied, a flicker of hope in her eyes. And we'll do it again. Tell me, how are we coordinating the attack? David thought for a moment, then said, We've divided the fleet into smaller groups. Each group will act like independent forces. The goal is to confuse the Zorgal, keep them guessing, make them fight battles on multiple fronts. That's where we'll get our edge. Good, Sarah said, nodding. We've always known how to surprise our enemies. Now let's show them that we won't just back down. The Earth fleet began to move into position. ships each a mix of old Earth designs and newly developed technology. Maneuvered through space, their engines humming quietly in the vacuum. The Zorgal ships had already begun to reactivate their weapons systems lighting up as they prepared for another attack. But the humans had learned their lesson. This time, they wouldn't wait for the enemy to strike first. We have to hit them hard, and we have to hit them fast. Captain Mills barked as he stood at the command center. All ships engage on my mark. The battle began. The Earth ships, smaller and less powerful, used their agility to dodge the incoming fire from the Zorgal vessels. The enemy ships, large and slow, were heavily armed, but their size made them vulnerable to Earth's quick-moving fleet. Earth's ships darted in and out of the Zorgal's range, firing strategic bursts of energy to weaken their defenses. The battle wasn't going to be easy, but Earth's forces were relentless. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, the humans held their ground. They used every tactic in their arsenal, hitting the Zorgal where they least expected it, dodging attacks, and making the Zorgal waste their firepower. Sarah could see the Zorgal struggling to adapt. The humans were unpredictable. They didn't fight by the rules. That was exactly why they were winning. On the front lines, Captain Mills gave orders with precision. He watched the battle unfold on the screens before him, his fingers running over the console as if the fate of Earth depended on each keystroke. And in a way, it did. He knew that a single misstep could mean disaster, but he also knew that the humans weren't afraid. The Zorgal were not a race that relied on mercy. Their ships were equipped with powerful weapons, but they had underestimated humanity's determination. The enemy tried to regroup, sending waves of fighters to overwhelm Earth's fleet. But even then, the humans fought back with everything they had. "We've got them on the run," David shouted, his voice filled with hope. He could see the Zorgal ships beginning to lose their advantage, their once formidable offensive faltering. In the face of Earth's unexpected tactics, it was a victory, but they knew it wouldn't last long. The Zorgal would soon adjust, and the battle would start anew. Sarah watched from the command center, her heart racing. It wasn't over yet, but she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The humans were winning the fight, and that was all that mattered right now. As the battle continued, Earth's fleet pushed the Zorgal back. Every moment, every victory, no matter how small, was a sign of the humans' growing strength. The Zorgal had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but instead, they had faced a force they hadn't prepared for: humanity's resolve. Sarah felt a sense of pride in her people. Despite the odds, despite the fear, they were fighting back. They had refused to join the war, but now they were fighting their own battle. They were winning. "We've got a long way to go," Sarah said quietly to herself, watching the war unfold across the screens. "But we're not backing down." The Zorgal Empire may have thought they were invincible, but Earth had proven them wrong. The humans had faced a great threat and had risen to the challenge. For the first time in centuries, Earth had shown its true strength. And the galaxy would never forget the day Earth fought back. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the tide was turning. The Zorgal Empire had underestimated humanity. Time and again, Earth's fleet had surprised them with unexpected strategies. The once feared invaders who thought Earth would be an easy target were now on the defensive. But Sarah Walker knew this was only the beginning. The real fight had yet to come. "I never thought I'd see the day," General Arthur Grant said, his voice low but filled with respect as he watched the battle unfold. "They're not just holding their ground. They're pushing the Zorgal back." Sarah nodded, her eyes glued to the monitors. The enemy fleet was faltering. The Zorgal were sending reinforcements, but their plans had begun to unravel. Tactics small, fast strikes, unpredictable maneuvers were forcing the Zorgal to fight in ways they weren't prepared for. It was a fight of strategy over brute strength, and for once, Earth's limited resources were working in their favor. "We're not done yet," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the excitement in the room. "They'll regroup. Find a way to hit us harder. We need to stay sharp." Her words rang true. As Earth's fleet gained ground, the Zorgal Empire began to shift their approach. Their next move was clear. They would attack Earth's defenses directly, hoping to break through the human resistance with sheer force. But Earth was not about to let that happen. The humans had learned from their first encounter, and now they were ready for whatever the Zorgal threw at them. Captain David Mills was at the helm of one of Earth's newest ships, the Defender. His face was set with determination as he gave orders to his crew. The Defender was smaller than the Zorgal ships, but it was fast, maneuverable, and equipped with powerful new weapons. David had spent years preparing for a moment like this, but even now, the gravity of the situation weighed on him. "We're holding the line," David said, watching the Zorgal ships try to break through the defensive perimeter. "But we need to keep pressing them. If we let up for even a second, they'll crush us." His crew nodded in agreement. The Defender was one of Earth's key ships, and David was determined to make sure it played a central role in this fight. He knew the enemy wouldn't go down easily. The humans had something the Zorgal lacked: unity. The Earth forces, though smaller, were moving as one, coordinated, focused, and unyielding. The Zorgal, despite their superior firepower, were now facing a force that wasn't afraid to fight back. "We've got this," David said, more to himself than to his crew. But as he looked out at the stars, he knew that the battle was far from over. Back at Earth's command center, Sarah was deep in thought. The latest reports showed a surge in the enemy's activity. Zorgal were reorganizing, their fleet positioning itself for a final push. Sarah could feel the tension in the air, thick with the weight of the decision ahead. "We've got one shot at this," she said, her eyes scanning the screens. "We need to hit them before they regroup completely. If we wait too long, they'll be back at full strength." General Grant stepped forward, his face grave. "It's risky. The Zorgal will come at us with everything they have. We don't know if we can hold them off a second time." "I don't have the luxury of waiting," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "The moment we hesitate, they'll make us regret it. We need to hit them hard now." As Earth's forces prepared for the next phase of the battle, Sarah looked around. At the faces of the people around her, leaders, soldiers, and civilians, all united by a single goal. They had faced overwhelming odds, and yet they had held their ground. It was humanity's spirit, its unyielding will to survive, that had brought them this far. But now, as Sarah issued the orders to launch the next wave of attacks, she knew that this moment would define them. Earth was no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their place in the galaxy. "We move now," Sarah said, her voice calm, but carrying a weight of authority. "We show the Zorgal that Earth is not a planet to be taken lightly." The battle raged on as Earth's fleet surged forward, hitting the Zorgal where it hurt. The enemy's ships, once so powerful, were starting to fall back, their defenses crumbling under the pressure of Earth's relentless attacks. The tide of the war was shifting. For the first time, the Zorgal Empire had been forced to retreat. As the battle continued, Earth's forces pressed on, never giving the Zorgal a chance to regroup. Sarah watched as their enemies began to scatter, their once organized fleet now broken and disjointed. The sight filled her with a sense of pride, but she knew the war wasn't over yet. There's still much to be done. "This isn't over," she muttered to herself, her mind focused on the task ahead. "But we've made our mark. We've shown them what we can do." In space, Captain Mills' fleet moved with precision. The Zorgal were now on the run, their forces scattered and disoriented. Earth's ships, though battered, were still moving strong. The human fleet had fought with everything they had, and now they could see the results of their efforts. "This is it," David said to his crew, his voice filled with pride. "We've got them on the ropes. Now, let's finish this." The Earth ships surged forward, their weapons blazing, as the Zorgal, defeated but not broken, tried to regroup. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Earth had proved itself back. At the command center, Sarah watched the final stages of the battle unfold. The Zorgal were retreating, their ships scattering in all directions. Earth had won this round, but Sarah knew better than to celebrate too soon. The Zorgal Empire would come back. They always did. But for now, humanity had a moment to breathe. As the war raged on across the galaxy, Sarah couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Earth had shown the galaxy that they weren't a planet to be ignored. They weren't weak. They weren't afraid. Most importantly, they were not going to let anyone take their world. The rising tide of humanity's strength had only just begun. The Zorgal Empire was retreating, but Sarah Walker knew this was not the end. It had been a hard-fought battle, but the enemy wasn't defeated yet. The Zorgal had been pushed back for now, but they were far from finished. Gained a crucial victory. But Sarah understood that the true test of their strength was still to come. "I don't trust them," General Arthur Grant said, looking out at the screens that displayed the Zorgal ships scattered across space. "They'll regroup. They always do. We can't let our guard down." Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the map of the galaxy. "I know, but we've made them think. We've shown them that Earth is not a planet they can just conquer. And that's going to make a difference." The command center was filled with activity as the remaining Earth forces prepared for the next phase of the war. There was no time for rest. The Zorgal would undoubtedly plan their next move, and Earth had to be ready. Sarah had already sent out messages to the other neutral planets, rallying them to Earth's cause. If the Zorgal Empire wanted to take Earth, they would have to face the united strength of all those who refused to be ruled. Meanwhile, Captain David Mills was on board the Defender, overseeing the readiness of Earth's ships. His crew was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. The Zorgal were not only powerful, but cunning. They had regrouped before, and they would do it again. But this time, the humans were prepared. "We've proven we can fight," David said. To his crew, as they prepared for their next move, "Now we need to prove that we can win. We hit them where it hurts, and we don't stop until they know we're not going anywhere." His crew nodded in agreement. Everyone on the Defender knew what was at stake. Earth's future depended on their success. The captain felt a mixture of determination and nervous energy, knowing that the final confrontation with the Zorgal was drawing closer. There was no turning back now. Back at the command center, Sarah was in constant communication with Earth's fleet. The final battle was approaching, and she knew that every decision mattered. Earth had already shown the galaxy what they were capable of, but now it was time to show the Zorgal what it meant to challenge humanity. "Sarah, we've received reports from our allies," said Lieutenant Olivia Simmons, her voice filled with relief. "Several neutral planets have pledged their support. They're sending reinforcements to help us fight." Sarah felt a wave of gratitude. The galaxy was beginning to see Earth's strength, and that unity was giving humanity the power to push forward. "Good," she said. "We need every ship we can get. We don't know when the Zorgal will strike again, but we'll be ready." The Zorgal fleet, although scattered, was beginning to regroup. Their powerful ships moved together, slowly forming a new battle line. They were not giving up without a fight. The Zorgal had faced setbacks before, but this time, Earth had shown them that victory was not guaranteed. Sarah watched the screens as the Zorgal ships aligned. It was a moment of calm before the storm. She could feel the weight of the decision ahead. This would be the final push. Earth's forces would need to strike first. "We need to hit them fast and hard," Sarah said, her voice firm. "If we let them gain momentum, we'll lose this war. We've come too far to back down now." General Grant nodded. "Agreed. But we can't afford to be reckless. The Zorgal will expect us to come at them head-on. We need to use the element of surprise." "Understood," Sarah replied. "We'll divide our forces into smaller groups. Each group will strike at different points in the Zorgal formation. We'll keep them guessing." The final battle began as Earth's fleet moved into position. The Zorgal ships loomed in the distance, their weapons charged and ready. The fate of Earth rested on this moment. Sarah stood at the command center, watching as the ships aligned, preparing for the fight of their lives. "Now," she said, her voice steady, "engage." The battle was chaotic from the start. The Zorgal Empire's ships fired their weapons with brutal force, but Earth's fleet was faster, more agile. Earth's ships darted in and out of the Zorgal formation, firing precise, calculated shots. Every move was calculated, every strike designed to weaken the enemy. The Zorgal, for the first time, were on the defensive. Captain Mills gave orders. To his crew, as the Defender joined the fray, the ship moved through the space battle, its weapons firing in quick bursts. David watched as the Zorgal ships tried to react. But their once impressive firepower was now being chipped away by Earth's relentless attacks. The enemy's formations were beginning to break apart. As the battle raged on, Sarah stood firm. The human fleet, though outnumbered, was holding its ground. The Zorgal were starting to panic. Earth's tactics, so unpredictable and precise, were slowly wearing down the once mighty invaders. The Zorgal didn't know how to fight against an enemy that refused to follow the rules. David Mill's voice crackled through the command. Center's communication system. We've got them on the run. Our formation is breaking apart. We just need to keep pushing. Sarah took a deep breath. The tide had shifted. The Zorgal were losing ground. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but now they were facing something they had never expected. A human will to survive that couldn't be broken. We finish this now, Sarah said, her voice filled with resolve. The final push came as Earth's fleet moved in for the last attack. The Zorgal, disorganized and overwhelmed, tried to regroup, but it was too late. Earth's forces hit hard, dismantling the remaining Zorgal ships one by one. The battle that had seemed impossible just days ago was now nearing its end. In the final moments, as the last of the Zorgal fleet fell back, Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief. Earth had won. The Zorgal had underestimated humanity, and now they knew the price of that mistake. Earth was no longer a neutral world. It was a force to be reckoned with.